Now, we know for a fact that Africa's working age population is growing faster than any other region. And at the same time, global employers are rethinking skills, locations, and labor models. Now, automation is eliminating repetitive jobs, while demand is rising for problem solvers, for digital thinkers, and eliminating climate-conscious innovators' problems. Reports suggest that Africa could see millions of green jobs by 2030, but only if education systems, policies, and infrastructure keep pace. The real issue isn't whether jobs will exist, it's whether African youth will be ready to claim them, or will they be stuck up on the previous status quo. It's not about to be a monologue, so I have joining me today on the show Oluwatobi Rasaq Alaka, a marketing professional. Thank you so much for joining us. We also have Eyitayo Ogunmola, the CEO Utiva, and of course we have Tobi Oyetunji, the founder, product and people. And also joining us is Ololade Olumuyiwa-Biala, the CEO and co-founder of Parther. Thank you so much for joining us. Very quickly, we'll just go straight into the conversations. Let me start with Oluwatobi. Now, global reports predict massive, that's Oluwatobi Rasaq, by the way. Global reports predict massive job disruption by 2030. So what does this actually mean in real terms for African economies?
Okay, so what this means is we need to be ready for this change that has already come to our doorstep. It's no longer something in the future. We're saying 2030, but we need to start looking at this from now. And that means that African governments, the African youth have to be ready to seize these opportunities as they come. And this goes beyond just creating jobs. It's actually preparing our youth workforce to take advantage of these opportunities when they come. We need to start working on upskilling. We need to start baking upskilling for this new reality into how we're training our youths. Not just only at the tertiary levels, we also need to start working from the primary school levels to the secondary school levels. We need the government to start putting policies in place to help prepare the youth workforce for this new reality. We need to start working. We need to start focusing a lot on our infrastructure as well, because the future is digital. Everybody right now is talking about AI, and in order for you to be able to take advantage of this, you need to be prepared and positioned effectively to be able to do this. And this is a hybrid thing. This is everybody, all hands on deck. Private institutions, public, government, schools, entrepreneurs, businesses. That's the reality, and they need to prepare for that as we go forward. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for that. Let me go straight to Eyitayo now. Eyitayo, as a founder of a tech talent company, which global job trends would you say that African youth should be paying the most attention to at the moment?
Especially when you think about it at scale, artificial intelligence has disrupted massively the way we all should think about where are the opportunities, right? Because the conversation of opportunities are changing. And I'm not talking about the hype. I'll give you a very interesting example. If you were a graphics designer some 5 years ago, you could rely alone on your personal creativity, right? And you could also rely on your ability to mix colors and create beautiful brand designs. But that has changed. So the first thing that is changing across multiple job roles is the way artificial intelligence is taking the work from the level of productivity that we had some 10 years ago to the level of productivity that we should have today. I personally believe that as humans, our job is to think and sleep and let the models do their thing. So we are moving from the manual creativity to the digital creativity. That means that we are outsourcing our creativity now, to artificial intelligence. But that doesn't take away the human side of the work. So we need to start to think about critically the kind of jobs we're talking about. So the first one is the digital technology jobs. They are out there. Talking about data science, cloud computing, cybersecurity, yada, yada, yada. But then it's the remote global jobs. With the fact that visas are becoming more expensive, the United States, for example, now has a $15,000 bond. The job opportunities we're talking about will begin to move digital. It's already digital. It is just that now it's going to be a massive, digital opportunity for the African market. So we need to think about green economy, the climate-linked jobs. We need to think about human-centered jobs. We need to think about digital technology jobs. But most importantly, we then need to begin to think about local opportunities, not just, global opportunities, but we also have a massive local opportunity in terms of the gaps. But how do we invest in the infrastructure to create those opportunities? A final example I would give. If you go to Alaba today, right, the opportunity for digital disruption is massive. There are thousands of people doing trades, and relying on global exchange. But someone needs to begin to build the infrastructure for these huge, massive markets, because that is the young population we're talking about. Every time we say young population, we're not just talking about the young guys in school. We're talking about those who are also, trading in the local market. How do we create the digital solution and infrastructure to help them create the opportunity? I'll stop there.
All right. Thank you so much, Eyitayo Ogunmola, for that. Okay, let me go to Tobi Oyetunji now. Now, AI and automation are replacing routine work worldwide. So is Africa more vulnerable or better positioned because of its youthful workforce?
All right, thank you very much for that question. So I would say, in a way, Africa is better positioned, right? It's better positioned for the move in the workforce. And the reason I would say this is because youths in Africa, we are at an advantage because we are very young and resilient, right? And for us to be more positioned, there is the need for us to kind of upskill so that we can get to meet the demand that is increasing by day. Because without reskilling, youth unemployment worsens. And when we talk about the digital being targeted, vocational training, Africa, we could readily leapfrog from older economies in which we are kind of constrained by the aging workforces into the new digital one. So we are in a better position to fall or to move in the trend in which the workforce is going. And in a way, we might want to, if we get to say, or if I get to say that, in a way we are vulnerable, because us being vulnerable means we are not readily upskilling to match the increasing workforce demand, right? So we become vulnerable if we do not get to upskill to match the increasing demand. But definitely at this present time we are better positioned, and all things being equal, various means we are putting in Africa, and even looking into Nigeria specifically. I believe and I'm very convinced that we are better positioned, for the future of work as it comes. Thank you.
All right, Tobi, thank you so much for that. Let me come to Ololade now. One of the vital questions that people are usually very curious about is, are Africa's education systems aligned with the skills that are actually needed for AI, for green energy, and even digital trade?
Thank you very much. I think my answer to that will be, in many cases, no. Africa's education systems are not yet fully aligned with the skills needed for AI, with the skills needed for green energy, with the skills needed for digital trade. And the most important step in moving forward is actually being honest about the gap, because you can't fix what you refuse to acknowledge. So many systems across the continent were designed for an earlier economic era, one that rewarded, memorization, a rigid curriculum, an exam for performance. But the future of work doesn't reward recall, it rewards application. So today's global economy values people who can actually solve real problems, work across disciplines, adapt quickly, and use digital tools confidently. Many graduates still leave school having mastered theory. I studied physiology. If you ask me anything in it, I probably won't remember. But they have mastered, theory, but lacking the real world experience. So for example, someone may study computer science, right, for years, but never build a real product or analyze live data or work with users, or even collaborate with like a multidisciplinary team. From an employer's perspective, that creates a huge gap, because employers don't look to higher theory, the higher capability, the higher capacity. So alignment means shifting education from being purely knowledge-based, but being capability-based. So it's about teaching people how to think, not just what to know. That includes critical thinking, that includes systems thinking, communication, and even digital literacy across all fields. So not just in technical programs, it also means integrating industries much more directly into education through internship, apprenticeships, project-based learning, and even mentorship. So learning reflects the real labor market needs. So take green energy as an example. Students shouldn't only be learning climate theory or sustainability frameworks. Those are theory. They should also be learning how to install and maintain solar systems, how to finance renewable projects, how does supply chain work, and how to scale solutions commercially. That's where real jobs are created. So digital trade is another area where alignment is weak. Success in digital trade requires understanding logistics, payments, cross-border solutions, cross-border regulation, data protection, and even user experience. Yet these skills are rarely thought together. Education systems need to become more modular, more interdisciplinary, allowing learners to combine technical and commercial and human skills. So importantly, in a world that it's already shaped by AI and rapid change, the most valuable outcome of education is not certificate. I would say it is adaptability.
All right, that's really great. Thank you so much for that. Let me circle back now to Oluwatobi Rasaq. Let's talk about the skills that are becoming truly global portable across borders and across industries. That's the skills that transcend, the national economy or even the continental economy.
Yeah. Okay, so I always like to say that we are now in the renaissance of humanities and social sciences. For a very long time, the focus on when it comes to skills development was STEM, science, technology. But now we are seeing a shift where humanities, social sciences are now skills, people that have those skills in those particular sectors are really in high demand. So what do I mean by that? Meaning that you need to start you're looking for people that are very good critical thinkers, people that can think critically, people that are very adaptive. Soft skills are becoming very, very regular because we're already automating everything. The technical part of things, the routine work that needs to be done, AI is already doing that. So what are you bringing to the table as a human being? You're bringing the aspect, that human nuance that an AI machine for now cannot replicate. You're bringing that critical thinking, knowing how to harness AI to automate the routine tasks. You are bringing the fact that no matter what is being brought to you, you are adaptable. And that is a skill that any employer of labor, be it in Africa, Europe, or America, will definitely find very, very useful. You need to be able to think, you need to be able to adapt quickly, you need to be able to critically investigate things, you need to be able to come up with solutions. Solutions-driven skill sets are very important because you need to show that, okay, beyond just AI, this is what I bring to the table. So beyond just you going to the university and getting a certificate and saying, I have an MSc in this or a bachelor's degree in this, soft skills are also going to be very, very important because at this rate, at the rate at which AI is going, entry-level jobs are now becoming a bit threatened because those ones are usually routine. But if you want to really, really grow in your career, you must not start thinking of portfolio careers. What are skills that I'm going to bring to the table that a machine cannot replicate? And that's what you need to do. Adaptability, digital skills, critical thinking, solutions-driven, learning how do I use AI to automate a particular role that I'm looking at. For example, if you're in marketing that I'm in or in strategic communications, how do I utilize AI to automate skill or routine tasks that we push out there? So if you are coming in, I'm coming in to tell you that I can use AI to do X, Y, Z. So before it will take you 10 hours to do this. Now, with my skills and knowing how to automate AI and to think critically, to prompt engineer, I'm going to be technical here, I can 10x our outputs, our productivity. Those are the things that employers of labor are going to be thinking about. Then also having an entrepreneurial approach to your career. Not coming and just saying, I want to receive a paycheck. It is the era of you thinking like an entrepreneur, even if you are working. you're helping the business solve problems. You're thinking about if it's your own business. Because now we're going from traditional roles to being a careerpreneur to even portfolio careers where people are just taking the skills that they have learned, using AI now and moving from one organization to the other. So you must be prepared for that eventuality. The linear career progression is no longer what it is right now. It's more of an horizontal thing, more of like skill sets, more of like portfolio careers. So any young person or any undergraduate or any fresh undergraduate must start thinking like that, because this is beyond just technical, oh, I've gotten certification from this. No, now it's beyond your certification. What stands you out from thousands of people? Now you're not only competing with your fellow human beings, you're competing with the machine. So critical thinking, adaptability, digital skills, soft skills, how to use that human element that the machines cannot replicate now. Those are thinking about as we go forward.
All right, thank you so much for that. Let me come to Eyitayo now. We understand that green jobs and tech jobs are often highlighted as Africa's big opportunities. But what does this really look like beyond the headlines? We talk a lot about it, tech jobs, green jobs, but is that the reality beyond the headlines?
Know what more to say, because it feels like the ladies have already, emphasized the critical part. And so when we hear the green jobs, or when we talk about, the technology jobs, I'll focus a lot on the green jobs. We're not talking only solar panels or wind farms. That's not what we are saying. It's a lot bigger than that. That's just a very micro element of the bigger ecosystem. Now, the first part is the technical and the operational part. Look at Nigeria as an example. We've got a very large population, 200 million people. We need to churn out a very huge, number of technical and operationally excellent individuals. And that could mean, renewable energy technicians, grid maintenance, workers, energy specialists, energy efficiency auditors. These are roles that will evolve over time. You look at the tech space, the digital space, you think about skills like data science, but beyond just the data science is the compliance and reporting roles that are embedded within that job ecosystem, right? So usually the way the jobs will be created based on three major fundamental principles. Number one is the fact that Africa has a very huge population, right, of young people. So we could supply the world with the talents. The second would be the internal gaps that we have. I talked about the energy sector, for example, and if we then begin to invest massively at scale, the kind of job opportunities we would create. Then the third one is the operational side of things. When we talk about this green energy things, for example, we're also talking about the financing and investment side of it. Because we want to supply solar panels, for example, to 100 million people. You would have to start to think about the financing. That means that the banking sector would also be affected. The financial sector would also be affected, by that disruption. So beyond the headline, there are three layers to the opportunities that exist for Africans when you think about it at scale. The first opportunity is the operational and the technical side of the work that we need to do. We need to build more cybersecurity engineers because the world is going to become more vulnerable, and the international community will rely on, us to supply the talent. We need to develop more product leaders, because the world will build more softwares that will be layered on artificial intelligence. That is a massive gap that would create economic mobility for our young people, right? But beyond that, because that sounds like the very interesting part, there's an underlying economic opportunity that will evolve. The more young people you build and they get jobs, the banking sector, the financial sector would also be affected, because it means that there's mobility of economic resources, to them. And these young people would have to house their money, would have to do massive transaction. People will need access to financing, and this is the kind of disruption we're talking about, right? And then it compounds. So that's one of the things I've always said, of recent, that greatness actually compounds. So you train a young person, then the young person leaves and then builds a company and hires another 30 people. and then you create the massive opportunity for that 30 people. And those 30 people then also earn more, and they return back that economic opportunity to their family. And that's how we're going to build an economic wealth, economic wealth for everybody. But it starts with really thinking about the gap, upskilling, but beyond just thinking about the technical side, it's also the underlying economic opportunity that will be created for other people.
All right, thank you so much, Eyitayo Ogunmola, for that. Let me come to Tobi Oyetunji now. Would we say that Africa could realistically become a major supplier of global talent, or is that narrative oversimplified? Tobi, I think you're okay.
Become a global talent, supplier, and we're even working the trade, right? We are already working in that path, in the sense that Nigeria, for example, even Kenya, Egypt, and South Africa, we're already exporting, tech talents to the rest of the world, right? There are platforms that we've even built here in Nigeria, using Nigeria as a case study now, right? That enables, our tech talents, or our talents generally, to be seen and visibly available to the, to the general public, right? So definitely we are already in that line. And if talent also, right, in the real sense, if we're intentional, then that place of us globally, supplying talents to the rest of the world won't be something difficult over time, right? The place where we need to now enforce, or where we need to further reinforce, is the place of scaling, right? Scaling these tech talents, or scaling this in large quantity, being consistent in our supply, and also ensuring, this is now coming to the government now, right? Ensuring that there is there are policies that helps readily support the move of talents from Nigeria, or from Africa generally, right, to the rest of the world. And of course, Africa at large, we have, like I mentioned earlier, we have that demographic advantage. United Nations cited, right? They said Africa, we have the youngest and fastest workforce, through to 2050. Meaning, till 2050, we still have tech talents that are going to be supplied over time, right? Every now and then, right? So there is now so much on us to be able to, develop and ensure these talents across board are well skilled up, right? This is where the edtechs, come in, where they get to build tech talents and talent generally, build them and make them readily, available to source for these jobs. Because trust me, there are various opportunities out there globally, that Africans can get to explore, right? And now also to the part of the government. Yes, governments, we are government is already, doing quite a lot of things. There are acts like, say, the Nigeria Startup Act, that helps promote homegrown innovation and global competitiveness, in Nigeria, right? And there are also some hubs, sites, various hubs, CCO hub and the rest of them, right? That helps nurture globally relevant tech talents. But then there is now the place to continue. I mentioned earlier, the place of consistency. We need to further reinforce all of these things we are building in Africa, right? And also the place of community. Going back to the talents now, in the place of the talent being intentional, there is a need for you to strategically place yourself, for you to be upskilled, for you to skill up, and also be readily relevant or available for these opportunities available globally, right? In the sense that you are joining the necessary communities. For example, the velocity, it helps bring the the top 1% professionals, brings them in connection to the already existing professionals that have spent years in the system, in the ecosystem, that could help you, that could nurture you, guide you through the system, and help you not make unnecessary mistakes in the course of you being relevant as a talent, right? So there are already communities that are already doing this thing in large scale. We just need to further, invest, put more energy, all of our energy into these things. And before we see it, in a few years from now, Africa will be, at the forefront of supplying talent globally. Yeah.
If the policy and infrastructure fail to keep up with the global shifts? Ololade, are you there?
Oh yes, I didn't hear the question, sorry.
All right, so I'm just trying to find out what risks do you think that Africa would face if the policy and infrastructure that we currently operate on fail to keep up with the global shifts? Because the world is shifting and it's not going to wait for Africa to be developed or to align, in terms of policy and structure.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the biggest risk I would say that Africa faces is actually being left out at a larger scale. And that doesn't happen because people are not talented. It would happen because the systems around us don't work properly. My colleagues have, they've mentioned about, Africa has the youngest population in the world. We have over 60% of our population under the age of 25, and that should be a huge advantage. But without the right systems, that advantage can quickly turn into pressure. So to take, for instance, many young people across Africa, they're capable, they're skilled, and they're willing to work, but poor infrastructure and slow policies make these accesses difficult. For example, internet access across the continent is still around 40% average, compared to over 90% in many other developed regions. So someone may have the skills to work, they may be willing to work for a global company, but unstable internet or power makes it impossible to work consistently. Another example is payments. Many Africans now work remotely, but cross-border payment systems they're often slow. They are expensive. They are unreliable. And when someone does the work but struggles to get paid, it limits how far those opportunities can actually grow. And when this happens to millions of people, it leads to underemployment. And in some countries, youth unemployment or underemployment affect over half of younger people, which creates, and obviously this will create frustration, pushes many to actually migrate in search of opportunity. And we see that, another big risk is dependency. If Africa only uses technology and ideas created elsewhere without building or owning anything, long-term growth will suffer. Other regions control tools, they control the data and most of the value. But Africa still stays at the bottom of the chain. It's not because we don't have talented people. Now, that weakens economic independence and makes global competition much, much more harder for us. Now, there's also the risk of growing inequality within African countries. Those with access to good internet, education, and global networks move ahead very quickly, and you see others, falling behind. So even if they are just talented, over time, that gap becomes very difficult to close. So policy and infrastructure, they're not abstract ideas. They directly determine who gets access to jobs, who gets access to income and opportunity. So if Africa, if we want to be a part of the global future of work, we have to build systems that actually allow people to fully participate, not just to watch from the sidelines.
Very spot on. Thank you so much for that, Ololade. Well, thank you so much to my guest. You have been doing absolute justice to this conversation, but we're nowhere near done. We'll go on a short break. You're still live with us on Fafanua Afrika. This is the show where we spotlight the youth, their challenges, opportunities, and we try to prefer profound solutions to some of those challenges. Stay with us. We're coming back. All right, many thanks for staying with us. It's still Fafanua Afrika. And in case you're just joining us, we've been talking about the fluctuating job market. And it's not just about jobs shifting, but it's about the era shifting. Now we have green jobs, we have tech jobs, we have AI-infused jobs. And many people fear that these new inventions will take their job. But at the same time, there is a way you can infuse yourself into the changing landscape. And that's what we're talking about today. And I have my amazing guests who have been doing justice to the conversation. Now, while global systems are shifting, African youth are not waiting quietly. From tech startups to climate innovation, young entrepreneurs are already building solutions that speak to global demand, often with limited resources. But innovation alone is not enough. Policies, investment, education reform will determine whether these efforts scale or stall. And this moment calls for collective readiness. So that said, it's not about to be a monologue like I always say. I have my amazing guests who are still with us to do justice to the conversation. Very quickly, I'm just going to go straight. Let me recognize them. We have Oluwatobi Rasaq Alaka, a marketing professional. We also have Eyitayo Ogunmola, the CEO, Utiva, Tobi Oyetunji, the founder, product and people, and of course, Ololade Olumuyiwa-Biala, the CEO and co-founder of Parther. Thank you so much for still being here. Now, let me go to Tobi Girl, like I've been calling her off air. Tobi, how can African youth position themselves strategically for global opportunities without actually burning out? Because we've talked extensively about the policies, about the shifting landscape, but the youth themselves, how can they actually position themselves strategically? Because it's one thing to position yourself, but it's another thing to be strategic about it for global opportunities.
Kind of touched on it before we went on break, where she said we need to start working more collaboratively as a continent. Africa has always been known to do things very fragmented. So when it comes to payments, tourism, even anything that has to do with trans or Pan-African, it's always been very fragmented. This is not the time for us to work in silos from a policy level down to even the youth among themselves. When you work remotely and when you want to position yourself for digital opportunities, you need to work with other people to be able to know what opportunities are available and to be able to even learn from them. So we need to work together to learn from each other. Africa is a huge continent with different cultures, different languages, different levels of development in certain, in certain fields. So some countries are more advanced than others. How do we encourage the youth? Our elders have tried to do that. How do we improve on that? And working together collaboratively in communities, in micro communities to collaborate, learn from each other, upskill from each other. I want to be able to work with somebody that is in Kenya. I want to not only the regional hubs that everybody is focusing on. They're not talking about Nigeria, they're talking about Kenya, they're talking about Egypt or South Africa. Other countries that don't even have as much visibility. How do we, the countries that have already created that visibility for themselves, how do we put work with the other ones? Someone in Mozambique, someone in Uganda, how do I work with all those kind of people to get that? And then once there is that collaboration, then you can now balance out things about, of course, example, if you're working globally, there's also a very high risk of burnout or high risk of mental health issues and all that. But when you have a community that has been built, that helps to balance out that and mitigate that risk. So the youths have to work together. We need to go beyond just waiting for the government to do things for us. We need to start working collaboratively together through community. That is already being done. We just need to deepen that. And then with the support of the private sector, support of government from your country, from regional governments, ECOWAS, African Union, all the likes, and then other international development institutions that are doing quite a lot of work, conferences, all those kind of things. Let's stop working in silos. Let's start working more collaboratively together. And then once we do that as a continent, the Western world will have no choice than to take us seriously. Because we cannot do this alone. Nigeria can't do this alone. South Africa can't do this alone. Kenya can't do this alone. But if we come together en masse as a full force, we can do it a lot with a fist than with individual fingers. So we need to work together collaboratively. I'm speaking to the youth as myself. I want to be able to work collaboratively. I'm always happy and open to join communities. I belong to one community that brought me here, Velocity. Let's keep on doing more of that, working together across borders, sharing ideas, sharing skills, sharing opportunities, working together more collaboratively, and see whether the other parts of the world will not take us more seriously as we go forward.
Thank you so much for that, Oluwatobi. Let's talk about entrepreneurial roles in all of this, absorbing and adapting. Eyitayo, as an entrepreneur yourself, what role should entrepreneurship play in absorbing future job shocks?
Tobi emphasized that we can't continue to rely on the government. The countries like Nigeria and other African countries should be built by private sector. So I wouldn't spend a lot of time on the government side. So in terms of entrepreneurship, now entrepreneurship is no longer an option, for Africa. It is structural to how we absorb the gaps, and how we also create new markets. And when I say the gap, the unemployment in Africa is huge. The scale is a lot, right? We are investing in human capital development at a massive scale. The government, for example, launched a program called the 3MTT program to train 3 million Nigerians in technology skills. Now, the training is happening, but the private sector also needs to understand that this type of upskilling is being done, to create opportunities for the private sector. And by the time, when I say opportunity for the private sector, I'm talking about the demand and the supply curve. Usually the price of commodities reduce massively when the supply is more than the demand. So if you're hiring a data scientist today in Nigeria, if the government is investing massively in training more talent, we need to create a model where the private sector can provide opportunities for this talent to move into quick jobs. And that could be in form of apprenticeship. Apprenticeship is a massive thing in Europe. Apprenticeship is a massive thing in the United States and the UK, right? Because learning itself, is useless if you're unable to really practice, what you've learned. So what I have noticed in my decades of working in this space is frustrating to see a young person invest in learning a skill, then it takes more than 3 years to even land a job. And it's almost impossible for you to land a job if you have not been able to prove yourself, right? What do you put on your CV? Okay, as a young person, I've learned cloud computing. I'm good, and I want to get into the job market. But no one is giving me the first internship. I'm not getting the apprenticeship, so I'm unable to actually even practice what I've learned. So it feels like we are burying the talents while we are also invested in them, and that's a waste of resources. The smartest way to close that gap is to go beyond the learning. And 2 things we need to do today. The first one is to create the opportunity for internship, apprenticeship, yada, yada, yada. But the second is the toughest. We need to build infrastructure for talent mobility. Now, the infrastructure for talent mobility is the hardest part. And I'll give you 3 different elements of that gap. Number 1 is if a company in another part of the world wants to hire a talent in Africa, right? Financing for that talent is a problem today. I'm a talent in Lagos. I got a job on Fiverr. The company or the organization of the individual is going to pay me X amount of dollar in the next 10 days. But there's no solution to accept the money. So accepting payment is a struggle. The second struggle is I now have a project. I quickly need a quick finance to get a laptop so I can do a better job. The financing is not available. So you see that the problem has to evolve from talent upskilling to building the infrastructure. And the only sector that can invest in that infrastructural gap is the private sector. So this is a call to all the entrepreneurs out there that the talent upskilling is for us. When the organizations train people, they are training them for us. We shouldn't be waiting for ready set talent, ready-made talent. We also need to step out and also invest in talent upskilling from the 2 different ends of the spectrum that I've described. The apprenticeship and internship. Give apprenticeship and internship to young people when they apply. It's as simple as that. You just imagine what would have happened without the NYSC. Like people like us, NYSC was our first opportunity to even say that we got a job. You like it, you don't like it. That was the first opportunity, right? Imagine if that opportunity wasn't there, right? So let us take a step back, give more opportunity in form of internship and apprenticeship, but also invest in the infrastructure. Infrastructure in terms of access to financing, building the payment rails, building the assessment infrastructure so that companies can assess talent faster and better, and also fixing that electricity gap that we have as a country, as a continent, because everything rises and falls on power. I'll stop there.
All right. Indeed, everything rises and falls on power. Let me come to Tobi Oyetunji now. How can African innovation ecosystems align better with the global demands?
All right. Thank you very much for that question. Right. And the key thing I'm going to say with regards to this is by solving real problems, simply put, right? Solving real problems.
Tobi, you can go ahead. All right, while we're waiting to reestablish connections with Tobi Oyetunji, let me just go straight to Ololade now. We would hold off on that question with Tobi, and when he's back, he's going to do justice to that. But Ololade, what are multinational companies forecasting for Africa between now and 2030, which is no longer far-fetched?
Thank you very much for that. I'd say a lot of multinational companies see Africa as a long-term growth opportunity, driven by its young population, its expanding consumer market. They are particularly interested in digital services. They are interested in our fintech. They are interested in our logistics. However, they are cautious. Infrastructural gaps, policy inconsistency, and regulatory complexity also slow investment. Countries that improve stability and ease of doing business will attract more high-quality jobs and long-term partnerships. So when we say that multinational companies
All right. Unfortunately, we're having.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, please go ahead.
A clear example is digital finance. Global companies watch Africa's progress in payments, in banking access and a digital identity, because financial infrastructure, it unlocks everything else. Logistics is another area. As trade grows, companies need better transport systems. They need warehouses, they need delivery networks, and also cross-border processes. So healthcare and education are also major focus areas because the need is large and it is growing. Now, multinationals they're forecasting that Africa as a talent market, more global teams are hiring remotely. A lot of people I know now work remotely in my circle, and Africa's youngest workforce is very attractive. So, but it still depends on stable internet. It still depends on reliable power, like I said initially, and payment systems. So where these systems improve, multinationals become more confident in hiring and investing. However, multinationals, they are also forecasting some risks. The worry about policy inconsistency, regulatory uncertainty, corruption, also infrastructure gaps. So even when talent is strong, companies still hesitate if they can't plan long term. For example, sudden changes in tax policy or import rules can make these operations more expensive and unpredictable. Currency instability, I don't think I need to overemphasize that. That also affects investment decisions. So what this means in simple terms is that multinationals are looking at Africa with interest, but they are selective. So they invest where the government supports growth. Countries that improve ease of doing business, countries that protect investors and their workers and modernize infrastructure, they will attract higher quality investment, not just short-term extraction. So by 2030, multinationals will likely deepen involvement in countries that show stability and digital progress. So for Africa, the goal should not be to attract any investment at any cost. The goal should be to attract investment that builds local skills, that supports local businesses, and creates long-term jobs for the youth. So that requires strong negotiation, it requires clear rules, and it requires policies that ensure value is created locally, not only exported.
All right, thank you so much for that. Let me reconfirm if we can hear Tobi now. Tobi, please confirm you can hear us.
Yes, I'm back. Thank you.
All right, so you were talking about the multinational companies forecast.
All right, yes, thank you very much. So I was saying earlier that, for innovation ecosystems to kind of align with global demand, there is a need for us to think in the perspective of solving real problems, right? real problems in the sense that across several sectors there are inherent problems. We don't need to kind of copy the Silicon Valley. You don't need to copy. Yes, you can look at what they are doing right, and then based on that, bring such an idea into our own African ecosystem, and then fix every sector. Talk of fintech, identity, logistics, health, agriculture. Right. Recently, I was speaking with being a product manager and also a coach in that field. I was speaking with a software developer recently, and he was saying that he has realized that now Nigeria has a case study now, right? That Nigeria, or even in Africa generally, we don't really have that edtech solution that's kind of meets our own problems, that is kind of built for us. And of course, the global, or let's say the Western world, wouldn't build a solution that particularly attend to your own problem, right? You need to build it yourself, right? So we're talking about how we could get to collaborate together to bring about a product solution that would get to, solve the education system or the skill gap system that is, inherent in the African space. Talk of the Udemy, talk of Udemy and co, right? It's not readily built for Africans, so to say. But then he was looking at a kind of an edtech solution that would cater to the African needs, such that talk of the languages could get to see various diverse languages in that solution, and then be able to communicate and then study at your own pace, right? Also, so we need to inherently look at the real problem we are facing in the African space, and then solve problems accordingly, solve in line with that, right? And of course, we need to, have a stronger startup enterprise partnerships, in the sense that there are tech ops networks across Africa, in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Egypt, that helps support global market readiness for startups and young businesses. So we need to, as young entrepreneur or as a very young talent, you need to plug into these hub networks for you to be able to bring your talents and your great idea, bring it to nourishment, right? Leverage, the place of leveraging digital market frameworks, and then also, exporting talents from Nigeria or from Africa, so to say, to the rest of the world. And not even regarding the tech space alone now. Think of the African trade. Recently, was not last year, May, the AFCFTA Nigeria, they gathered youths together, to think of whatever solution in the global trade or in the e-commerce trade that you can get to think of solutions across the board, and then build within the space of 1 week. And there were various talented youths right there that looked into various sectors: fintech, e-commerce, local produces that needs to be exported to the rest of the world, right? And digital solutions were thought process around building digital solutions were thought of at that point in time, and it was built in a meaning way, right? And from there, the government representatives, NITDA, and the rest of them, they were there to even support both financially and in making some networks available to them to further deepen the trade system. So these are the things you can get to do to better align with global demand.
Okay. Thank you so much, Toby. Apologies because of our time. We're just going to have to rush through one more question. And because Toby had mentioned the government, I'd like to focus on that a bit. I'll direct this question at Eyitayo. What should African governments be prioritizing now to prepare for 2026 to 2030?
I want to take that from Toby. As we look forward from 2026 to 2030, I'm super excited about some certain things, right? The African government needs to focus on policies that connect skills and human capital, number one. Number two is digital and physical infrastructure. Number two, but then I also want to emphasize the very subtle thing that Ololade talked about, which is the policies and regulatory frameworks. because ultimately that is what is going to unlock the growth in the long term. If you invest alone in human capital and talent and then physical infrastructure without, backup policy, that will think long term you will miss. So on skill and human capital, we're already doing well in that space. Today there are more micro learning platforms. I used to say that everywhere you turn, there's someone training African talent today compared to some 7 years ago. So learning a skill is cheaper, it's faster, it's better. Today, there is no excuse. Even you can learn it for free. The government already launched a 3-entity program, which is almost 100% free. You can learn skills like AI, machine learning, cybersecurity, yada. But on the digital and physical infrastructure, government must continue to invest in infrastructure that underpins things like broadband access, reliable electricity that I talked about, digital identity, because that's one of the major things that have really been on the burner, of recent. Company wants to hire a talent, but it cannot digitally identify, the KYC, KYT, know your talent. You cannot identify the person that you're hiring. You don't even know if the person is real or not, and then the payment infrastructure. But on clear policies and regulatory framework, I just want to talk a little bit about that. The first thing I think the government needs to begin to think about is curriculum revamp. We need to declare a state of emergency on that. I was telling one of my friends 2 weeks ago, said if I become president, I'll declare a state of emergency on curriculum. We need to change that curriculum. But the approach to change the curriculum shouldn't also be the old model that we used, which was, set up a committee and then tell the committee to say, hey, go create something, and then, that the world has changed. If you create a curriculum today, in the next 5 months, the element of the curriculum is also changing. So the best approach to curriculum readjustment is to bring the private sector to teach something in school. Okay. And I will stop.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but because of our time, I think that this is the best place to wrap it all up. Thank you so much to my amazing guests for doing justice to this conversation. Oluwatobi Rasaq Alaka, marketing professional, Eyitayo Ogunmola, the CEO Utiva, Tobi Oyetunji, the founder, product and people, Ololade Olumuyiwa-Biala, CEO and co-founder of Parther. Thank you so much for joining us and lending your voice to this very pivotal conversation. Well, that will be all on today's episode. Thank you for staying with us. You can catch all past episodes on our YouTube channel at News Central Television. And this has been Fafanua Afrika. I'm Blessings Mosugu, and until next time, have a wonderful rest of your day.